welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a Puerto Rican podcast talking about Star Wars and other nerd related media. Today, after a week hiatus, we're back. We're back to talk Star Wars, surprisingly, it's because nothing has happened in the last week to discuss. That's not true. So much has happened in the last week to discuss that we are very excited to talk about it. As everyone expects, Nani is still studying for the law exam for the bar, so we continue to wish her luck here at Triad of the Force as she continues to study for that. We know that she will do great, so we keep sending her our good wishes and good luck, even though she doesn't need it. But today, to fill out our dyad in our discussion, is our good friend Nicky Kumar from the Imperial Senate podcast. Welcome, sir. How is it going?
Thanks for having me. It's going, as well as we can hope, given the circumstances of life in the world
Hmm, hmm.
and media. But yeah, no, it's one of those things we take a hit, we keep moving, and um, I think this is a big hit to talk about. So I'm glad we got the opportunity
Yeah,
to lay it out
it's
a little bit.
it's definitely been like an interesting couple of months because, like you said, there has been a lot of hits, but there's also been lots of reasons to be hopeful as well because there's lots of
Hmm.
good things that have been announced, lots of positive, hopeful things happening around media that is kind of quenching the thirst of hope because I feel the beginning of this year there was a lot of hopelessness, and obviously I'm talking specifically about the election that's coming up with
Hmm.
people not excited about Joe Biden and he has to drop
Hmm.
out, and like we just were basically dejected and ready to give up the fight and be like, well, we're
Hmm.
apparently just going to go into another cluster of another 4 years with another presidency from the orange turd, because we're not going to dignify people here by calling them by their name. But
Yeah.
despite the odds, he dropped out. Kamala's in. There's more energy. There's everyone's
It's an
invigorated.
energy whiplash.
Yes,
It's like,
yes.
wait, what?
I mean, because when the
Wait,
when
where?
the when the unaliving attempt happened, I remember that I was just like, "This is it. It's done." Like the dude won. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, to
Yeah.
do like a complete 180 from that to where we are now,
Hmm.
it's wild, and I feel that we're in
Yeah.
a similar place with Star Wars, right?
Hmm.
Where where we've kind of now in a position of lost hope, but fighting, where a couple of weeks ago we were kind of gaining that hope with SDCC, with San Diego Comic Con, a lot of the announcements that happened there, and obviously with D23. So I'm very glad that you're here to talk about all of this because you have a lot of awesome thoughts on the subject, but also you were at D23, so you have like some insider vibes into
Yeah.
what the state of the House of Mouse is like, considering everything that
Yeah.
we saw over there. So before we get going with specifically with Skeleton Crew and D23, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your perspective has been with the state of Star Wars leading to D23? Because I know it's we're like pre D23 and post D23 in many ways.
Yeah. I think heading into D23 with Star Wars, I'm about to make zero headlines because my relationship with Star Wars has never changed.
Mhm,
Like I enjoy what we get, and I want to continue to enjoy what comes out. And that's kind of just always been my baseline. Like
mhm,
I'm not one of these people who, at the slight instance of feeling like there's mediocrity in the system,
mhm,
start
mhm,
complaining about the dire state of Star Wars. Like
mhm,
that's not
mhm,
me.
mhm.
Maybe it's other people, but like um I generally find value in everything I see from Star Wars, and I think that's what is so good about it to me. It's like it's not. I think you can debate all day whether Star Wars is whether a thing is good or bad, but like I think it's always been unequivocal to me that like unequivocally true that Star Wars is always good-hearted.
Mhm, mhm,
And I think that is what I always always will take first. Um,
Mhm.
so like even the Acolyte, like um, there were things in that show that I wouldn't call wrong or bad, but like against my sort of instinct pushed up against it. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, okay, that's cool, that's cool." Um, so, like, it's not even a case and that's something I enjoy, like, I think that's a good challenge as a fan because I think there's 2 ways you can take that when something sort of hits you a certain way where
Mhm.
you're like, "Oh, that's interesting that I'm less inclined to like that. I wonder why, and I wonder if it has, like if it's gonna, like, you know, change over time versus I need to go on YouTube and
Mhm.
monetize my
Mhm.
anger.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
that's the fork in the road,
The
and, I
performative
always felt
outrage, right? Yeah, that's what
yeah,
we're seeing right
yeah,
now.
exactly, and so I always find myself, whatever goes on in Star Wars, um, I always find myself in a really healthy place with it, and that's what I entered D23 with. That's why I was just kind of excited to be there. It was my first time,
Mhm.
going to the convention, and I was only there Friday, but it was really cool to just sort of go around and see the things like I'm very much a celebration person.
Mhm.
Like I don't really do conventions in general outside of celebration.
Mhm.
So it was funny seeing one that was very different because like
Yeah.
I'll tell you the big things about D23, standing in lines, shopping, and um like experiences.
Mhm.
They the booths are like super made up to be like you know like you're gonna go there and do something. Like they had one for the bear, and I think they were actually like chefs cooking and like
Yeah.
giving you food and and
Ve
like
very, very Imagineering, very Disney, the treat the
yeah,
convention like a
which
theme park almost.
right. And speaking of the Imagineers booth was the best part of it
Mhm.
because there's like this gigantic central thing and they had all their like history. It was like walking through the Imagineering story and
Mhm.
then also in sections they had actual like active R&D
Mhm.
stuff that they were working on. And they had Imagineers there on site to talk to you about it. So like we saw
That's
this like
incredible.
modular treadmill system
Yeah,
that
I've
they've
seen
been
the
working on.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was just talking to the guy. I was like, or I was like, so what do you like have a function or like did you like design this with any sort of thing in mind? And they're like, no, not really. Like we just did it because we could. Like, and I love that spirit. Like, um, the just the urge to push and
Mhm.
see what's out there. And so then we were talking about like uses and it was like they're excited to think about it in terms of VR and being able to like walk in place but
Mhm.
travel and like get that sensation. They were talking about it like in terms of on stage like theater performance and
Mhm.
like just what you could do if you built that into um a stage. And so yeah, that was like the coolest part. But of course, we are here for Star Wars, so I do need to talk about the Lucasfilm
The
booth,
pièce
which
de
was a blast, and
résistance.
yeah, the Lucasfilm booth was a blast. Shout out to Lillian Noble. We all know Lillian.
Lillian.
I ran into her always working hard at those events, and yeah, the coolest thing about the Lucasfilm booth was they had this like gate and it said Lucasfilm, Lucasfilm logo. You go in and then it's just the floor and like a semicircle of the volume.
Mm,
And that was it.
yeah.
Like it was just the freaking volume. I was like, "Oh my god, we're here." And for the panels, they would just show stuff like on the volume. So like I was there for the Lego
Mhm.
Rebuild the Galaxy
Oh, yeah.
panel and they just showed the trailer on the volume. It was like this is just funny to me that we have this incredible piece of technology.
They just showed me
They're like
A Lego trailer.
and trailer. Yeah. Yeah. And so that was really fun. I got to see Queel because Legacy Effects did
Mhm.
a did a panel as well, so that was really fun.
Yeah.
And then in between panels, what they were doing with the volume, the ILM guy was like, "So basically, we're gonna turn this into essentially the coolest photo pass of all time." And they would put, you can get in line and go on the stagecraft set, and they would film you like you're in a Star Wars show. And then they had these like screens on the side that like were showing what the camera was doing, and it was incredible. It was so much fun to watch, and it just and they'd even bring like people dressed as stormtroopers or like TIE
Mhm.
pilots to like stand in the background and give like depth
Depth.
perspective and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And yeah, and man, it was so cool. It just makes me really appreciate that whole technology even more, and what they do with it, because it's wild. It's so wild.
I think that for me is one of those special things, and because it always makes me think about like when I was growing up, and one of my favorite things about any movie that I liked was when it would come out on DVD, and not just any DVD, but the special edition 2 disc DVD. Because the best part beyond the movie was like going into the second disc
Mm,
and going into the special features and seeing how the sausage is made, all the
yeah.
documentaries of the behind the scenes and the mini docs of the VFX and the costume department, all these things. And it's always interesting to me when I hear people say like, "Oh, I don't want to know how it's made because it ruins the illusion for me." But for me, it's quite the
Mhm.
opposite. For me, I'm just like, just show
Yeah,
me how everything's done so I can see the magic of everything. Because
exactly.
in a way, it
Yeah.
really enhances it, right? It's just like it's not just a static thing. It's not 24 frames per second each static image. It's like no, it's
Mhm.
hundreds of people behind the scenes that are making literal magic, art
Exactly.
that just
Yeah.
like it's the most interesting thing to me. And we'll get to that point a little later when we're talking about like what's happening with the Acolyte and streaming in general, because I think that it's what we don't see that to me has more value, right? Because we can see the actor on screen and we know that the director's doing the thing and we know that the writer is doing the screenplay or teleplay, but there's so many hundreds of people behind the scenes too that
Mhm.
are passionately working on it, right? To create everything, even the thing that has the worst reviews or people hate the most was made by a group of people that are passionate and loving and caring
Yeah.
to make sure that they do the best thing. So I think that's always something to keep in mind when we start talking about how these shows are made and how we're going to engage with them. Because one of the things I was reading today, it was Robert Downey Jr.'s salary for uh,
Mhm.
coming back as Doctor Doom
Yeah.
in Fantastic Four, which I'm not here to talk about the casting. That's a completely different conversation
Different show.
for a different
Yeah.
for a different
Yeah.
episode. I
Yeah.
understand the discourse around the how it's problematic. I don't want to engage with that
Mhm.
today. But I think the interesting thing for me was 90, I think it was like $95 million, and then I was reading about the new Brad Pitt film and Brad Pitt and George Clooney film where they're both in the between the two of them and the director, they're making like almost $100 million on a production that's worth X.
Mhm.
Like it's basically half the budget on
Yeah.
just three
Which is
people.
John Watts, actually. So, tied in
I mean,
into Skeleton Crew.
respect, respect.
Yep.
You're listening to this. It's not about you,
Yep.
sir.
No, no,
uh,
no, absolutely not.
but then you start thinking about it, and I'm not trying to take anyone's hard-earned cash away from them, but then you start thinking about how all of this system starts creating these machines of content, and I hate that word, right? But like that's how they're viewing it,
Yeah.
and its value is not in the story itself, in the art itself. It's kind of misplaced in where a lot of it's going. And when I see only three people make more than this is, I mean, it's a problem with America too, right? The top 10 to 1% earns more than the bottom 99 and all
Mhm.
that stuff. And it's just like, really? Like the people that are making everything and that are the ones that sustain the world as we know it are the ones that are being recognized least and acknowledged least. So with I mean, I know I'm jumping into the acolyte a little bit, but when you're talking about the volume and all the people that come together to just create that technology and
Mhm.
motivate and foment it and push it forward into the future, just to me signals there's something wrong with what's happening with television, with film, with streaming, with the entertainment
Mhm.
industry. I don't know if you wanted to react to that real quick before like I kind of shift us back into
Yeah,
into the
definitely.
conversation, but I just got distracted there for a second.
No, for sure. It's all relevant though. Like that's the thing. It's a completely completely
Mhm.
valid tangent. And yeah, like I saw that same number about Robert Downey Jr. and I think the statistic I saw with it was both the budgets of both Godzilla minus one and Alien Romulus are less or equal to what he's gonna rake in.
That's
Like,
absurd.
and that is absolutely wild. And I think honestly, all these people making the money, like I believe like many of them are decent humans,
Yes, yes.
and like I think I think they would just as simply um, agree with us that the way budgets have been inflated over the past
Mhm.
whatever years is absolutely ridiculous. And like that is the game. Like when you're in it, that is the game because yeah, it is one of those things where it's like, well, pay me what it's worth. And
It,
if
it,
it's
it
worth that, that's what it's worth. But
but
like
I
also, why is it worth that?
yeah, yeah,
Like
right, right.
I think that's like the general that's like the root of it. And I think they would probably in private like agree on that point. I think a lot of people want to see it return because it's yeah it's like the phrases we always go to. It's like we've killed the middle movie, we've killed
Mhm,
the
mhm, mhm.
the
Yeah.
middle budget movie. You see, there's no touchstone pictures anymore.
Mhm,
There's
mhm,
it's all gone. And it's why I think Cord Jefferson's Academy Award acceptance speech for American Fiction was so welcome on that stage when he's like, every movie is a risk,
mhm.
but you make those risks anyway, on those big ones. So like, why not, instead of a $200 million movie, make 10, $20 million movies,
Yep, yep,
and
yep.
or make, and then just break the math up how you want. But it's like, um, and it's like, you will find greatness. There are people who want to do this because it's like it's meaningful to
Mhm,
us as
mhm,
an art form. And yeah, like I think that's just a something that's ridiculous. The budget of these things, and it's why the stakes are so high. Again, it's completely relevant to the Acolyte. It's like
mhm,
the stakes are so high because if you don't break the if you don't break records,
mhm,
it's like
mhm.
you're either
You
crap or
failed,
you're
yeah.
breaking
Mhm.
records,
It's
right?
it's
Like
it's insane because let's look at Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, a movie that by
yeah,
all metrics like I really liked. It's in my top Indiana Jones movies, and but when
yeah,
you look at it, by any measure, if that movie had been an $80 million movie, it would have been a wild success. But it was an
hmm,
Indiana Jones movie that cost more than a Star Wars movie. You know,
yeah,
it's like the cost of making that movie was astronomical, and like I understand like the Harrison Ford de aging is expensive. It's hard to de-age an old man like it's hard to de-age
yeah,
Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in The Irishman. But you- but but
yeah,
but you can't tell me that all of the money went into that. Like there is something wrong with like where all the money's going to, because you can't tell me that we were doing
yeah,
films even 10 years ago like for half those budgets that look just as good. And but now
hmm,
it's insane. And to also tie it back to what you were talking about, actors kind of actors, let's face it, at least front facing liberal actors that support the guild and were there for the strikes and supported everybody and said the right things. But then in a way, it's just like, yeah, you're saying the right things, you're showing up in camera and doing the right things. But then when you do those things, you are inherently doubling down on making the problem worse, because now you're just kind of forcing the studio to be like, well, either I pay Robert Downey Jr. or I pay Chris Evans or I pay whoever it is,
hmm,
or I pay 200 people that are going to be in the VFX department.
yeah,
And sadly, the choice is always one person that's worth an absurd amount of money, and
yeah,
200 people are unemployed. So it's one
hmm,
of those things where it's
hmm,
just like you like the ethics of being rich. It's just like at some point you gotta say like, when is enough enough, man? Like when like I know
Yeah,
that
exactly.
there's a thing where it's just like, let's see how far I can push it, but when how far you can push it means that you're going to screw over hundreds of people. It's just like then
Mhm.
you're just as bad. That's just like not
Yeah.
you're just as
I
bad
mean,
as
it's
the
all
scab
like
at that point.
yeah, like for me, I mean, for me, it always goes back to that like a timeless classic of
Mhm.
like billionaires and influencers are two classes of people that should not exist. Like
I agree.
in
Agree.
my
I
point of view.
absolutely agree.
And it's just and it's just like yeah, it's like at what point do you say no, thank you?
Yeah.
Again, it's like it's also there's times where I'm like I don't feel like making a judgment like that's something like I can't say, well, Robert, you shouldn't take the money because it's like it's also not my place to tell Robert Downey Jr. not to take the money. But it's also, but then it's like, yeah, like at what point would he say blah? Like
I mean, at that
it's
point,
very like it's a very weird like dynamic. I don't
yeah.
know.
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, but there's also like for me a point of being also like when is enough type of thing, and at that point it's not about money anymore. Like
Yeah.
when you have the amount of money
No.
that a lot of these people have, it's not about money anymore, it's about power. And for me it's just like you could just
Yeah.
leverage your negotiating power to do other things. Like why doesn't
Hmm.
and I'm just using Robert Downey Jr. as the scapegoat just because I just read about it today, so it's not personal. I love him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's great. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
Iron Man, you
And
know.
he also has a history. He has a history of turning down mega deals to make sure the
Mhm.
other cast members were
Which is
elevated. So it's like
exactly
it's not like he's yeah, it's not like he's the one devil in
right, right,
in the
right.
system.
It's
But
not him.
like
It's not him.
yeah,
It's everybody. Eh,
it is just the topic. It is
it's
the
just
current
it's
topic. Yeah,
what's in the
yeah.
zeitgeist right now. But yeah, like
Hmm.
you said, it's like using that power to leverage helping other people. So you can be like, yeah, my salary's gonna be
Hmm.
like 95, but this other amount has to go for this, and that, or for a charity. I don't fucking care. But anything that makes it,
Yeah.
so not just about yourself, but also elevating the craft. And it reminds me, again, to keep it topical, about Keanu Reeves with Matrix Reloaded
Hmm.
and Matrix Revolutions, when famously, if I'm recalling correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to say I don't want to
Yeah.
push a misinformation here. But for Revolutions, I think that he didn't take a salary so that the VFX department could kind of finish the movie and have the money that they needed
Hmm.
to finish. And I'm just like, I mean, that's using your power for good in
Yeah.
this industry. And
Yeah.
I just wish we saw a lot more of that from the A list instead of just silence and complicitness with the corporations, and only verbal uh, performative speeches when SAG-AFTRA or whoever goes on strike. It's just disheartening, at least to me.
Yeah. And like I also want to know who obviously is like we're probably not going to know the details of that deal, but like let's also imagine somebody at the studio. Let's imagine Robert Downey Jr. didn't go in with demands
Mhm.
in terms of salary, and let's imagine it was the studio who slaps down $95 million. I'm like, how does this sound, Robert? And it's like to me also, who makes that decision?
Right.
Like that is ridiculous. Like it is ridiculous money to offer. So like obviously we don't know how that was negotiated, but like if let's assume I mean I would assume fairly safely Disney started with a high offer, you know, and like and it's just like it's like that those numbers are like it's like monopoly money to them.
Yeah. Which is why it's infuriating then when they're like, "Oh, we're losing
Yeah,
money on Disney Plus, so now we have to cut all these shows that people are
right.
invested in." Just what kind of company are you
Exactly.
now?
Yeah. Yeah, again, that's why there's so much at like executive level. Like
Mhm.
again, this will be a theme of this conversation. Like we are dealing with a an industry that like does not make sense. And like I don't know if a person is out there to explain the business logic of the streaming services to me because I don't get it now. I doubt I'm gonna get it like in the
No.
next few years, if they still exist in the next few years. And it's like yeah, it's like you try to explain that bubble to me, and I don't get it. Like it's just one of those things. Like again, the original sin here. It's almost why like my feelings of the acolyte have been muted
Mhm.
as far as the cancellation because the original sin is still Willow,
Yeah,
and
and I wanted to touch on that, so keep
yeah,
going.
and like
Pull that thread.
right, right, but like just nobody can make it make sense to me how removing it
Mhm.
from existence is somehow better for the company. Like that will never make sense to me.
I mean, my understanding is
And
just about royalties, right? Because if it's streaming, they still have to pay everyone involved a royalty for the stream, so it's just cheaper to just take it off,
so
and
it's
that way
like,
it doesn't
but it's
happen.
also like, is that worse than leaving like Limitless with Chris Hemsworth on? Like, especially with all the
Yeah,
stuff they have on that
right,
platform
right,
now,
right, right.
right? Like with Hulu coming in and like with everything. It's like you're telling me that that is the one. Even the again the show with queer leads and
Mhm, mhm.
loads of
Well, I think
actors of color and an awful look. Like
that's the
yeah.
kind of triggering thing about it because it's there's a correlation really here with the shows that are being I mean for this discussion we're only going to talk about two, but there's a correlation about
Hmm.
the types of shows that have been removed, the kinds that stay, and the kinds then because the another important part of this conversation to me is that the backlash that a certain group of alleged fans have against these projects, and it's
Hmm.
like you said, the shows that are adventurous because they're doing something different with the franchise, the ones that are led by queer creators and the ones that have diverse casts. It's strange to me, yeah, that Willow, what I mean, let's be honest, Willow, I don't know if a Disney executive thought that Willow was going to pull the numbers that Star Wars or Marvel does, but I don't think in
Hmm.
anyone's mind that was a show that was going to be that thing. I think that the fan the Willow fandom is limited, and I'm not sure what the
Yeah, no,
crossover
it's small. It's a small
between
world. Yeah.
between the Game of Thrones fandom and the Willow fandom is. It does definitely
Right.
exist, but I don't think that the people that are watching Game of Thrones are like, damn, I need to get my Disney Plus subscription so I can watch Willow. So it's
No.
a disingenuous thing to kind of come in with the expectations that Disney probably had for Willow, and then disrespectful. So not, I mean, not just, I mean, obviously it's disrespectful to everyone involved with the show. I think it's disrespectful to the company in of itself to be like, oh, now we're gonna like take it off and pretend it didn't
Yeah.
exist. It's just like you're one of the top entertainment company in the world, and you're
Yeah.
just gonna keep raising prices on your streaming service for less content
Hmm.
and less new content because they still keep
Yeah.
the trash that Disney did like decades ago, and that's still on. But all the new stuff that they're trying
Yeah.
to make, that stuff gets the axe and gets
I
deleted.
like it's the same. It's again, it's all these things are the same issue, right? Like I remember when um I think it was Jermaine Lucier.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think it was him writing for IO9 about Willow, and I think he may have interviewed John Kasdan about it. And I remember he asked a question that was like, so Willow really failed to like break into the public's like consciousness or whatever. Like he started a question with that. And I was like, is that the metric? Is that
mhm,
actually the metric? Because if that is the metric, that's really shitty.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
and it's really it's so anti story. And it's that same thing of like you either make a billion, you either
mhm,
break
mhm,
through, or you get in the garbage because you've failed. And like that is this attitude that you see from fans to media to executives. Like it that attitude is through the whole system.
mhm,
And it's like if you don't make money, you're garbage.
mhm,
And like that and that is not I guess that's the point I bring it up again. It's like that is part of the problem is that is not simply an executive point of view. Like that has become the pop culture's point of view in a way.
yeah,
And like I think that is in large part why again why it's like yeah, it's disingenuous because it's like how can you expect how can you expect Willow to do that? Willow is not Lord of the
Mhm,
Rings.
mhm, mhm.
Like Willow is not, like as you say, Game of Thrones. Like, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't be reaching for that. It should just be reaching for its own audience. And
Right, right, exactly.
and I think
And
like
be allowed to reach it because some shows kind of
right.
people discover it after a while. It doesn't like happen
Hmm.
immediately. And I think that's the aspect of TV that we're losing. We're treating TV as movies,
Yeah.
and people just have to connect with the show immediately when it comes out. I mean, and I understand that there's need for some engagement to justify moving forward with the future, but there also has to be the counterbalance of like shows find their legs afterwards, shows
Yeah.
find
M-
audience afterwards, especially with
My
streaming where you're kind of closing the door
right.
for a lot of people to be able to watch it because it's not behind the
Yeah.
paywall.
You
I
can't just
think
flick through channels and find
right,
it
right,
kind
right.
of thing. Yeah. I think one of my favorite examples is when I started watching Next Generation,
Hmm.
Star Trek, which my friend was like, "Oh yeah, 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 no, it's good, it's great, but probably doesn't like get going until season 3." Like season 3, like it's like, and of course that show would have had, um, even at the time, the backing of being a Star Trek show,
Hmm.
but like you think now, like would it get to 3 seasons?
No.
Like would it? Like I know outside of Prodigy, like Star Trek has taken pretty good care of its TV shows at Paramount Plus and stuff. But like, would it make it to season 3? Probably not. Because it's like, yeah, you things aren't afforded time, and I also do get it. We call it show business because it's business, and
Hmm.
like
Hmm. Hmm.
we can't be like lovey dovey necessarily because yeah, like you said, like you do have to bring engagement. You do have to bring money. Like you do. It's unrealistic to play in a world where it doesn't. But I think that's it's almost like finding that balance point is where we're really like struggling. It's like at what point is something pulling its weight,
Right.
but also like being allowed to exist because and like that's the thing. Like even I remember like when Willow was gone, I think that was like a time when they cut a lot of different things, even just things I would have never watched, which is totally fine. But I remember like an article saying something, or maybe it was a tweet that was like, um, they're effectively killing the cult classic. Like
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
model has
Hmm.
killed
Yep.
has killed
Absolutely.
the cult movie because it's like you have to be huge or you don't exist,
Right. Right.
and it's like, well, yeah, like nobody's. It was something like Moon Crater or some some weird movie, right? I know that they made that was like low budget, low, just low, attach it to whatever
But that's one of those
thing
things
it was
where
like, and
that's
but
why
it's
I
gone. And
but to that point, that's why I kind of hope at to an extent that and because we're talking about Will, I'm going to keep talking about that specifically. That they do a
mhm,
physical release of it. It's just one of those things where I mean, yeah, you don't want it on streaming because of tax
yeah,
reasons or whatever. Sure, fine, but at least put out like it doesn't have to be a fancy steel book, but put it out for
mhm,
people to have it and
yeah.
like discover it, as opposed to like now it's just like gone to the ether. It's and let
It's very
people
strange.
discover it and
Yeah,
be and
it's
have
almost
it,
like
and
yeah,
you
it's
make
almost
money
like I
off of it.
feel definitely right, and I feel like, and we know it's not hard to produce those things like in terms of like cost, like like putting on a disc is like not a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's weird, like, with Willow, it's like this I feel like we've reverted to, like, ancient times, and I
Hmm.
like, the only way to tell people about this show is, like, gather around the
The
campfire,
campfire.
people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let me tell you let me tell you about Willow, and it's like
Back in my
it's
day, there was
ridiculous
a
to me.
sequel. There was a
Yeah,
sequel to Willow, and it was on Disney Plus. Uh,
yeah,
not just the
and then it's
movie.
like it's peak, like, "Okay, grandpa, let's get you to bed."
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
I swear it. I
it's
swear it. Warwick David came back. Yeah,
it's like Netflix used to mail DVDs to me.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, okay.
Like sit
Um,
down, and it was only 9.99. It's like okay, sit
yep.
down.
Gosh,
But it's
we
it's
had
it's
it.
sad. We had it good. We had it good. But
Hmm.
it's also the deconstruction of the value and importance that it's being generated for a lot of these projects too. Because I mean, not to say that the projects have been bad, because obviously I love the Acolyte and I liked Willow, but there's this whole thing with streaming as a whole where the respect to the medium is kind of lost now, and it's one of those things where you look back at the gold, at Mad Men and Breaking Bad, Sopranos, and
Mhm.
all these, the golden age of TV shows, right? That came out 20 years ago. And it's, well, 20, 10, 10, 20 years ago. Sopranos started
Yeah.
before Mad Men.
Mhm.
But you see that all those shows had consistently came out yearly, had like multiple episodes per season, like over 10 episodes per season. Remember 24 when it had 24 episodes a season? It's one of those things
Yeah.
where like there were like the showrunners were they were allowed to tell the story that they wanted, and it was called prestige TV. And then everyone
Mhm.
wanted to have their own prestige shows. But I'm just like, wait, but you want the prestige, but without fighting for it or without investing in it, because you're not letting storytellers tell their story, and you're studio meddling. Then you're not letting giving them the budgets to do what they want, even though the budgets, like some of the money's going God knows where. With shorter
Yeah.
episodes, shorter seasons, longer wait time between seasons. So it's just like you're shooting television, you're kneecapping these shows,
Yeah.
which to me is mind blowing when you look at it, because I thought you wanted to do prestige, but now you're just doing like limited series. Which is, there's nothing wrong with the
Yeah.
limited series. Don't get me wrong, but you know what what I mean,
It's
like the.
actually my preferred medium of story. um, the limited series. But yeah, like
But yes,
I think
like I
it
like a
I
limited series when it's intended to
yeah.
be one. You know what I'm saying? Like Skeleton
Exactly.
Crew, which we're
Exactly.
gonna
Yeah.
talk about, gonna be a limited series. It's gonna tell its own story. But
Right.
a lot of these shows weren't meant to be that.
No, and I think that's like it's almost one of the I don't even actually know where to start because there are so many. It's like it's so just this big blob
Mhm,
of crap. And I think part of it actually is you mentioned prestige TV. I think prestige TV has done this to the system.
mhm,
Like
mhm, mhm, mhm,
it's prestige TV's fault in a lot of ways because um again, like streaming is not profitable. I think Disney Plus only just went
mhm.
in the green like
Yep,
this year for the first time.
and that's only thanks to
Um
taking the getting rid of Willow.
yeah, yeah, thank God.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Otherwise, on the red.
um yeah. And it's like TV in this way does not make money unless you're mega. And that's I think that's the thing like with Game of Thrones, Sopranos, like all that, The Wire, like all that kind of
Mhm,
stuff. That is like prestige TV, and that the hallmark of it was like oh yeah, what is that? It's high quality 10 episodes a season kind of
mhm.
thing. And so when everybody tried to do that, like we
They
killed the
lose it.
money
Mhm.
makers,
Yep, yep.
right? Like because it's almost like a high risk high reward type thing. So like obviously Game of Thrones is a money maker, like obviously 10 episodes, but like not everything will. And you got to have those like you got to have that system underneath you to be the reliable stuff. Your 20 plus 40-minute episodes on network television.
Mhm,
And like cutting all that out to make way for prestige TV because everybody wants prestige TV. It's like again, like I bring up Star Trek, like Next Generation was like 20 plus episodes per season, 40 minutes long on TV,
mhm.
and it lived for 7 seasons.
And
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 I
multiple
adore
films.
multiple films, and I adore Strange New Worlds. It's like one of my favorite shows. But there are times where I'm like, why is this only 10 episodes? Like, why are we prestige TVing this? Like, why can't Strange New Worlds be 20-minute, 40 or
Mhm.
20 episode seasons? Like,
Yep.
it's like it's everybody has moved to this model, and it's like it's almost why I think the limited series might be like the only way you survive streaming because it's like you can't sustain these shows. And I think something like Star Wars is so well suited to a one shot. Like you know, the spirit of the one shot comic. I think it's like I talk about Werewolf by Night a lot
Mhm,
and
mhm.
being like, I'd love to see Lucasfilm presentation similar to Marvel, how they did just kind of like a little like an hour, like a
Mhm.
special like mini movie, or like hit these shows like Sherlock seasons where you get like
Mhm, mhm.
3 hour, 15 hour,
Yeah.
20-minute episodes. And like, because then I think you cover off just the crap. Like, because it's like automatically a conversation like comes up about, oh, where's season two, where's season two, where's season two, like. And I think in the way these things work, like they try to make them so that they have possibilities, and I think that could be a problem. So it's like let's take Book of Boba Fett. I think Obi-Wan, it's safe to say that was a pretty like well planned out, because it was a film. It's pretty
Yeah.
well planned
Mhm,
out. This 6 episode run. This is it. But let's say Book of Boba Fett. They only made one season. They never said there was gonna be season two. They never said it was just a limited series. They never said anything because the possibility needed to exist for it
mhm,
to
mhm.
go anywhere. So if you're not gonna continue, you can say, "Oh, nothing happened." And if you are gonna continue,
Yeah.
then you're like, well, look at that, great stuff, great stuff, more. And
Mhm,
um, and like technically speaking, that is what happened with the Acolyte.
mhm,
There was never a season two, like officially. It was never
mhm,
greenlit in the
mhm,
process of, you watch House of the Dragon and like the season two premiere comes on, and then like an hour later they're like season three and four is
mhm, mhm,
greenlit, and it's just like that did not happen. So it's like they did the same thing where they leave it open, and it's almost like to save face, but I almost feel like it could be more like of a genuine thing if you're just like, here is the Acolyte. It is an 8 episode story.
mhm,
And I think then people would sort of get it. And I think maybe moving forward, that is the way forward. And not to play this like, is it a multi-season thing? I don't
mhm,
know. We'll see. Like, because maybe you can just make a limited series, and then if it's really popular, then you can say, well, let's make another one, and not have this, not like just erase this conversation that Deadline is able to break, of
mhm.
like, it's canceled, everybody, it's canceled. Woo, come on, look, it's canceled.
Which I think
It,
was like such an interesting perspective from them to frame it that way, because they knew that it was going to be targeted and triggering, for lack of a better word. Because, like you said, bringing up Book of Boba Fett, with Book of Boba Fett, no one reported about it in that way, with the
mm,
language that was used in that report. And I feel like for Acolyte, like it's been kind of intentional because of all the
yeah,
baggage that that show has had
they
with
have,
it, because of the vitriol that it has been
right,
sustaining.
right. They have their own motive in how they make money.
Mhm,
Like, it's they're not here to do anyone favors. Like,
yeah,
I think, it's like, look, like, you know, you spend enough time in LA, or spend enough time in the fan community, and you like you learn, you meet people through people, you learn things down a grapevine. I don't have a scoop to break, but like I feel like I can say pretty like confidently, Lucasfilm knew about this hours before Deadline broke it. Like,
repeat, sorry,
that's
you broke
how.
up a little bit. Say that
Oh,
again.
sorry. Lucasfilm knew about the decision hours
Mhm,
before
mhm.
Deadline broke it. Like, this
That's
was not
yeah. I mean, I suspected
this was not
that it
yeah,
came from
this was
different
not
directions.
premeditated.
Yeah.
This was not premeditated. Um, and I think, I know you probably want to touch on it a little more in depth later, but I think that's why there are book announcements. That's why Manny is at
Mhm,
D23 and Celebration, because by all accounts, Lucasfilm was in. I think the term I see is soft green light. So
mhm.
like,
Yeah, I read
it's
an
like,
article that mentioned that.
right. So sort of like, okay, we haven't got the call, but let's check on things, check availabilities, check, get a few ducks in our, in
Mhm.
order. And um and and yeah, and then it came down, and it happened very fast. And so again, it's like Deadline is not, the trades are nobody's friend. Like
Mhm, mhm,
it's similar to even low stakes things when the Hollywood Reporter is like, Katie Sackhoff's in The Mandalorian season 2, and it's like, at what point are you breaking industry news and also like spoiling the show? Like,
mhm.
it's like they're not here to they're not here to help. Like they're here to make money.
Yep.
And so that's why canceled is their chosen word. Canceled is inflammatory.
Mhm,
Canceled gets people on all spectrums of reaction. Like, whether you're upset or happy. Like it's such a like loaded word, especially
mhm.
for the landscape we're in right now. So yeah, like, you know, Lucasfilm, Disney, whatever, they could have said, obviously the Acolyte, like, I think season 1 is a complete story.
Mhm.
It's a great story. Obviously, there are numerous threads left to go into, right? Like, but I think there is a case if they had just decided to make it one season, like I could live with that.
Mhm.
But when it comes down to like canceled, you had the floor, you had the rug ripped from under you. I think that is like just immediately more. It's like it's that notion of like something was taken from me and
Right,
I need to
right,
be mad. It's like, so yeah, I think just in general, like I don't trust the trades. Well, I mean, I trust them with the information, but like I don't
right.
trust their motives.
The motives and intention.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
you opened the door. I mean, we've been subtly talking about Acolyte, well, not subtly, but tangentially talking about Acolyte through Willow and everything that's
Hmm.
going on with streaming in general. But we're kind of like at Acolyte proper, and I think
Yeah.
I think it's no secret to anyone that listens to Trial of the Force or has seen our social media accounts or seen our reviews for the Acolyte. We're pretty much on board with it, and
Hmm.
we here are fans of the High Republic. We read most of the books. We read the comic books. So like it's an era that we've been really enthusiastic about, and we've really hopeful for what the Acolyte was going to be. I said it before that when Acolyte and Andor were announced, I was way more excited for Acolyte because it's new, it's different, it's not tied to the
Hmm.
Galactic Civil War and all those things. So it was a show that like I was really looking forward to, and I think for the most part it delivered. Like any show, like I have nitpicks and things that I think didn't work or could have worked better this way, or we can go down that rabbit hole with any show. I mean, even though even
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I bet we could do that with Citizen Kane too. But it's one of those
Yeah.
things where it's just
Wait, are
like
you telling me the arts are subjective?
exactly. But it's the thing of just like, but do my personal desires, wants, nitpicks really take away from what the story gave us? My answer is no, and I think that the
Mhm,
Acolyte on the whole was particularly good and really intriguing premise, and I think something that Star Wars desperately needed because it's just an angle that it hasn't explored before. And despite Mandalorian being a multi-season show, I really felt that Star Wars needs another one to appeal to
mhm,
other fans as well. Because Mando, let's be blunt about it. Mando appeals to a certain generation of fans and a certain group of fans that wanted a certain thing, and that's fine. I'm one of those as well.
I'm not even sure that's true.
I
Like,
mean, I think it's broadened its appeal with season two and
I think it's
three.
part of it. I think it's part of it, but we can't forget, like, the Mandalorian and Grogu,
Mhm.
like, they changed the world.
Yes.
They they changed the world, like, so, like, I think that's just something. I know I'm not necessarily saying you were doing that, but it's because I've seen something online too much for my liking of, like, see, the Acolyte being canceled, so it's the Mandalorian's fault, and
Oh no.
the Mandalorian is only just for people who want old slop, and, like, I think that is something that of, like, there's a the that we'll get into the reaction, I'm sure,
Mhm,
later,
mhm.
but, like, um, a mass overreaction,
Yeah.
but I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know you're making a wider point, so
No, no,
go. Like,
and I agree. I
yeah.
think that to an extent, and to I mean, I try with everything I post, I try to measure myself and not post too much because I know some people start posting out of passion. And I know that there's optics of how things look, and we always have to be nuanced in how we're kind of reacting to it, and making sure that we're kind of making sure that we're seeing what part of what we're saying is emotion based and then factual based. And I
Mhm.
know that there's a lot of what you're saying that I've seen online, which I understand the point of view from it, but it's definitely a lot more nuanced. Eh, but I think we can all agree that the Acolyte was kind of a thing that was trying to appeal to a wide. It was casting a wider net. I think in terms of like what it was trying to achieve in terms of like its story and setting, and to me it succeeded. And I think one of the things that this whole hashtag renew the Acolyte, hashtag save the Acolyte has proven is that there are a lot of people that are invested in this show that wouldn't be the quote unquote classic Star Wars fan, which for me is very hopeful for the franchise because I think the franchise needs to grow necessarily.
Mhm.
And to then tie it back to what you were saying, what we said at the beginning of the episode, seeing all the tie in that the show started doing with the art of the Acolyte season one, the visual guide by Pablo, the first book's by Kristen Baver, and then Justina's book about Vernestra and the Kelnaka one shot and like all the comics now say
Mhm.
a century before the Acolyte. It's kind of started giving the impression that we were going to have Mandalorian as the kind of like our show that has multiple seasons, and the Acolyte kind of running in parallel with that as like our run, our continuously running uh, shows. And all of a sudden, we get to D23. Manny shows up, and it's all like this huge panel about Manny Jacinto, and Manny's announced to go to Star Wars Celebration Japan. So everything seemed to be in place, and kind of going back to the Willow conversation of the end of Willow when they close the chapter on book one and then they put it on the shelf and it's like books
Mhm.
two and three and you're like, oh crap,
Yeah,
this
we
is
have a
we're
plan.
going,
We
yeah,
have a
it's like we're
yeah.
going, we're
Mhm.
making a fellowship and we're going down this path. Uh,
Yeah.
and with the Acolyte, I felt the same because then that the we got Darth Plagueis, we got Yoda at the end, so it's just there's momentum. Like it felt like everything was being pushed forward, and all of a sudden to have
Mhm.
this, it's just like what? So I, it's frustrating because it's just like
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I
I
the
think
instinct is always to
that's
blame
yeah.
Lucasfilm, but in my mind, Lucasfilm was promoting the show. Like,
Lucasfilm is not in the business of giving you less Star Wars. Let's get
yeah,
that out of the way.
hmm
Like, that needs to be and I know it's easy to, like because it is their product. I know people will always say, "Lucasfilm, why are you doing this? Why are you doing" I
hmm
guarantee you, Lucasfilm has no intention of giving you less Star Wars.
hmm
Like, that's that's something if your urge is to feel like they did this, I would encourage you to expand your view because it's just like it, yeah, like they don't like everything you just listed. It's like the acolyte is such a part of their um their world going forward and I think again it's like it is so much bigger and out of our control in
hmm
terms of what's going on. Because I mean, you just talked about the Mandalorian being multi seasons. Like, I don't think there's gonna be any more seasons of the Mandalorian.
hmm
I think I think if the Mandalorian and Grogu film is a success, it's gonna be more films.
hmm
Um, and you probably again you look down the slate and you're like,
there's no shows, no
okay,
movies now.
Mangold film,
hmm
Ray film, Mando and Grogu.
Filoni,
This
yeah.
alleged Sean Levy, Feige, whatever. Like, it's all movies,
hmm
and this is a I mean, for God's sake, Taika Waititi still is technically it's a Star Wars movie, right? Like
hmm
all these things are in the distance to whatever degree, but they're films, and this is the industry, right? Like they are seeing movies making like a crap ton of money again because like we if
But not
we
every movie.
no but movies are surprising again,
Mhm,
and like Romulus is a big
mhm,
one right
mhm,
now
mhm.
in terms
But
of
how much did it cost to make?
it cost $80 million, yeah,
Yep,
and it's probably gonna finish around 400,
yeah.
which is
I think it already crossed
incredible
200, I
run.
was reading today, and it's great.
Yeah,
I love Romulus.
uh,
Wonderful.
big time fan. Yeah, but people are seeing that, and they're seeing, my God, Deadpool and Wolverine um blasted the R-rated
Mhm,
record like it was nothing. And anyway, like the point being, when we rewind back to 2020, December 2020, and they did that Investors Day call, and people will put up this image to make any point they want, but
oh,
like
mhm,
regardless, the image of Kathy Kennedy with all the stuff behind her,
yeah,
the shows, all the blah movies, blah blah blah. And we've had varying degrees of realization of all those titles, but like the fact of the matter is, in December 2020, they were looking at a very, very, very different world,
mhm,
and that's why streaming is the bubble, because they thought we could load the crap out of it. They thought we could give us this epic buffet of stuff, and fast forward 4 years later, that buffet is looking pretty limited right
mhm,
now,
mhm,
and we need to stop making stuff for this. We need to put it on in back in theaters because people are going to the theaters again, and it's like that is what you're fighting against.
mhm,
Um, it's not Lucasfilm not wanting to do this. You're fighting against a gigantic industry that is not really seeing the value anymore of um of straight to platform,
mhm,
essentially. And like I think, again, that's disappointing for so many reasons because we were sold a buffet and we're not getting a buffet. And there are people who, again, it's like it was always so exciting because it's like, oh wow, there's so much where things can be made and people can get a chance, and it's already hard enough to get into the industry. It's like you want
mhm,
to create as many opportunities as possible, and you're seeing this, especially at like with the strikes, and after you're seeing this
mhm,
almost like executive class that is almost like outwardly hostile to, like openly hostile to
mhm,
your writers and your actors and stuff, and it's like, yeah, like that's why these things aren't getting made.
mhm,
Like, and I know like there's a whole lot of the role in which the asshole grifters play, and it's like they got this canceled. I'm like, believe me, they did not get this canceled. Like, they contributed, but this is not the win. This is
mhm,
not the win that they are claiming,
mhm,
and
mhm,
nor should you. Like, it's like it's so much bigger, and it's devastating because we want to see more things. We want to see things thrive. We want to see different flavors. We want to
mhm,
see all
mhm,
these different things, but like, yeah, like the people making decisions are not interested in that. So it's like, where do you go? I mean, it's like Bob Iger, like during the strikes, he was like, I think the Marvels failed because it didn't have enough executive oversight.
right.
It's like, okay, yeah, not
It's
the whole
when has that
strikes and
narrative ever been
promoting,
true?
and yeah, and then also he said something like, we're not,
In
our
the
films shouldn't be in the
politics, yeah.
business of
Mhm,
sending messages,
mhm,
but like it's about entertainment. I'm like, no, Bob, you're describing a park ride.
mhm, mhm,
Like,
mhm,
films are about ideas and messages. That is the art form. Like, that is, that is what it's about. And in delivering ideas and messages, it is entertaining. Like, it is not something you buckle into and wheel around for 5 minutes and then say that was fun. like
It's
that's not what
interesting.
it is, Bob.
It's definitely interesting, this whole shift that we've been talking about from Disney Plus moving away from shows, which I think it's strange because that's the whole point, right? Of like having your streaming service is having content that is made for it, and then now see both Marvel and Lucasfilm shift away from doing limited series and TV shows for the Disney
Mhm.
Plus platform, and then shift to films. Which for Marvel, fine. Like Marvel has always been the multiple film a year a juggernaut
Mhm.
that it has for the last 10 years. But for Lucasfilm, I think that it's interesting that Disney is pushing them back in that direction because I just think back to the Solo and Rise of Skywalker debacle, not debacle, but scheduling conflict that there was there. Because for me,
Oh, okay,
like
yeah.
it was one of those things where I'm just like, I mean, yes, Star Wars was always made for the big screen and to go and see it in
Mhm.
a big in a theater format, and it's one of the things that I love about Star Wars the most. But a thing about Star Wars that I remember about growing up was that, well, one, it didn't exist anymore because when I grew up, I mean, I was very lucky that when I was growing up, the Star Wars films came out as a special edition, so I was able to see them in
Right,
movie theaters.
right.
But as a prequel kid, and same with the prequels as the original trilogies, there were 3 years in between Star Wars
Mhm.
movies. So for me, a lot of the fun as a fan for these films was the waiting and the expectation and the anticipation and the build up
Yeah.
towards it. It's a pressure cooker of anticipation for these films. And then Disney comes along for the sequel trilogy, which I love. I love it for the most part, but it's just like bam bam bam, just like shooting them out so quick that I'm just like, in my mind, I'm just like, that just doesn't feel like Star Wars if you're just like getting it all the time. In a way, I feel like
Yeah.
for consistent Star Wars, Disney Plus was great because that way you get like all these uh, uh, for lack of a better term, secondary stories that we can be watching
Mhm.
like all the
Mhm.
time, and then the big screen is like for the big event. It's just like this culmination or
Right,
this new saga
right.
or something like that. So that's why now seeing this shift into the films, I'm just like, are we gonna go back into the thing where we're gonna get too much too quick? I don't know if you had any
Yeah.
thoughts on like this return
Um,
to the big screen for Star Wars. I'm
I
excited
think it
for it,
won't be
but
the
I'm
case.
scared.
Yeah. I think it won't be the case of too much too quick. A, because they know they goofed on Solo. Like, they know they goofed hard. It's like they stuck it to that date and they should have moved. They ran it up against Infinity War.
Mhm.
They ran it six months after Last Jedi. Like it's it's not like they know. And with that in mind, I think like I mean even you know you talk about Marvel. I don't think there's another like Marvel movie this year,
No.
which is a shift. That is a shift from their normal strategy. And so
Well, which is, I think,
yeah,
it's
I
it's
don't
a consequence of them retooling everything after the Jonathan Majors debacle and having
I think
to
that's part
shift
of it,
from
but I
from
also don't
Kang.
think I also don't think there was a whole lot there to be like in the tubes. And like it's probably a lucky break for them because I think they would have released quickly probably a bit hesitantly. um
Mhm.
but but yeah, I think the point being we're going to have stretches between things now. Like we just will. Um I Mando and Grogu is not until 26. Um the Ray movie, don't know.
Mhm.
The Mangold movie is a little. I mean, both these films were allegedly going to be starting soon, but I think I mean, the strikes changed a lot, obviously,
Mhm.
but but everything's been shifted away, down, spaced out. Like I think it's not. I don't think we'll ever be like our past trilogies
Mhm.
where I think obviously so much has changed, but I think yeah, it's like everybody tried to keep up with Marvel, and I think that was the mistake.
Mhm.
Um, so like, and I think even probably at Marvel, somebody knew like this is not sustainable. It's just so we're all on the same page. Like this is not gonna work forever, ever and ever. And I think Star Wars trying to be like movie a year. I love all five of those movies,
Mhm.
but a movie a year is not a natural cadence for Star Wars, as you
Mhm,
pointed
mhm,
out.
mhm.
And so
I
it's
wish
like,
it could be. Like I'm open to, you know, it kind of changing and be surprised by it. But, you know, it's one of those
yeah,
things where back again to the prequels and the originals, you were only getting the saga films and there was that wait in between. Obviously,
yeah,
with the sequel trilogy, that
yeah.
model shifted because now we have the spin-off films. So obviously Rogue One
And the
was a
pop
great
and like the
success. So
pop culture is totally different.
mhm,
Like,
mhm.
you know, in terms of just how things were. Like, I mean, you know, we got those. I mean, the prequel movies were like, you remember how they were talked about,
Yes,
like,
yes,
like
absolutely.
it's like, oh, well, these are the stupid ones. So like, we'll go
Mhm,
see it, but whatever. Like, just the whole attitude has changed, and the way things are sort of cranked out, and it's like, yeah, it's I think we're not existing anymore in that like 2008 to 2019
mhm.
like era of franchise release. Like, I don't think it'll look the same in terms of sort of like pure numbers of what's coming out. I think there's got to be. I mean, that's the thing. Like, Mando and Grogu's filming now,
Mhm.
and that's not coming out for 2 years, right?
Good.
Like,
Like I don't want movies to
but
come out
yeah,
fast.
totally great. I don't want what's it called, crunch. I don't want burnout. I want people to have time to make the thing in a nice amount of time.
I
That's a
compare it
beautiful
to
thing.
I
Yeah,
compare it to Daredevil Born Again, where they kind of started doing the show and then halfway through they were like, this isn't working. Let's start again. And it'll take longer,
yeah,
but we need to just get it right. And I feel like that's
yeah,
what it needs to be. It's just like tell the right story. And
yeah,
if it means kind of waiting longer, that's fine. I know I was saying that now we have to wait longer between seasons, so it's a little bit contradictory. But I feel like with television is different because you plan the next one as you're doing the other one, so it's television is different from film. So
yeah,
I feel like
yeah. It's like
both
all these
statements can
models.
coexist.
No, for sure. All these models have just. I think that's like the overriding point is like the models have been broken and
Mhm,
jumbled up, and it's all been like thrown back on the table. And yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, like we just watched House of the Dragon, and like
mhm.
the joke is see you in 2 years.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
good
But I mean,
God, like really,
we had to wait 2 years for this one. I was like,
like,
okay, see,
like
bye.
Thrones, like again, Thrones was reliably
Mhm.
until like the very end. Like the first 6 seasons were year after year after year after year.
Yeah,
April, where we will see you in April. See ya,
yeah,
be there, kind of thing. And like, and now, yeah, now these time frames are just totally whack. I mean, Rings of Power is coming back after 2 years. Um, like it's just weird. Like, and it's one of those things that's like I don't know. I'm not enough in the business to know where solutions lie. It's almost just like right now our job as fans and amateur pundits is like it's almost just more in like an identification phase.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
let's acknowledge that things are weird right now. It's like it's yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't know if there's a fix. If there is, if it's all just still a bubble waiting to collapse,
yeah.
like I don't know.
Which is one
Like
of
people
the
haven't known.
silver linings of
Mhm.
this acolyte debate that we're having now, which I think is
Mhm.
helping. I mean, I think what we're talking about is a thing that everyone has known for a while, but I think it's more present now in the discourse and obviously publishing because we've seen it in Forbes and Rolling Stone. And a lot of other online magazines and thing have been calling out the broken system that streaming is in. I think it's at least helping bring it out in the forefront a bit more so that hopefully, because the only power we as fans have is in the engagement that we give content and stories online, and obviously withholding our wallets when it's time to renew our subscriptions for Disney Plus and Max and Amazon Prime and going to the movie theaters. So
Mhm.
maybe this galvanizes something to be able to make
Yeah.
some change in some way, but
I think
we'll
another
see.
thing like Netflix is I think Netflix was very it had a reputation for having a season or having a show for one season and then be like, "Eh."
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
like I feel like for the most part, a lot of the other streamers avoided that.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, you're gonna get more time at other places. And Netflix is the one to watch out for.
Hmm.
But as we've proceeded along, like we're seeing now, Disney cut, Amazon, like it's just happening. It's happening wherever and everywhere, and it's like that is why it's such a big it's such a big I don't know if it's a feature or a bug, but it's like it's certainly a reality of what streaming is doing right now, and it's like you're saying earlier, like is it not the point to make stuff for the platform
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
grow it that way? And I think they've realized like the answer is no, it's not. Like
Yeah.
I think the point now is to load up with an archive, and
Hmm.
and I think Netflix maybe realized that early because it started big with House of Cards. House of Cards was a huge
Hmm.
thing. Orange is the New Black, huge. Like all these things started, and then eventually it got to the point where people were like, not too into that. I'll just watch the old things that they have,
I mean,
and
and that's exactly what I was gonna say. Now we're in a big nostalgia cycle. Once again, because there's always like pop culture nostalgia cycles, and right now we're
mhm,
living through one because everyone, and I think Deadpool and Wolverine is the perfect example of that cycle that we're in right now because we've
mhm,
seen like all the previous Marvel films not perform as well as Endgame and before that. And I think Deadpool and Wolverine kind of encapsulates how we want to go back to the early days of streaming and franchising because everyone's celebrating, obviously, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and we got Jennifer Garner's Elektra and Channing Tatum's joke of his unmade Gambit film and Blade, Wesley Snipes.
mhm,
So it's kind of like going back to how Marvel and streaming and franchises were 20 years ago. And I think that to your point right now, it's just like, yeah, like everyone wants to rewatch their comfort show from when they first signed up to the streaming service. And it's just like,
mhm.
is that really the future? Just like
Yeah,
regurgitating. I mean, don't get me wrong.
and I, and I
I'm the first one that watches comfort films and comfort TV shows, but
right.
that can't be all of it.
Yeah, and I think partly also of like Deadpool's success as a movie is like it's almost uniquely capable of handling all that
Hmm. Hmm.
because
Hmm.
of
Yeah,
because of the nature of the character, right? Like
exactly. Yeah.
it's like because like if someone made an argument to me that like Deadpool and Wolverine is a nostalgia trip
Hmm.
only, I'd be like, you didn't watch that movie.
Hmm.
Like you didn't see that because it gave a totally new Wolverine. It gave a totally
Hmm.
new
Hmm. Hmm.
fresh take. It's there's great development throughout, but because it's it's about a character who knows they're in a comic book
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
slash comic book movie. It's like you get to play with that in a way that is is like it's like showing everybody the cards, right? It's like yeah, it's fun seeing Wesley Snipes, but here's why
Hmm.
it's fun because the industry is weird.
There's only gonna be
And like
one blade.
right.
The best line
It's like
from.
all those things like and and yeah, like it's yeah, it's just it's such a like strange situation to be in because it's like I want even if let me like even if I hated the Acolyte, I would want season 2
Yeah.
because I think even like a normal, well-adjusted person who didn't like it
Yes.
would be interested in seeing if season 2 makes improvements
or
or changes the
or
line
wouldn't
or
or even wouldn't care. Just like, okay, well, they continued that show that other
yeah,
people like
not for
that I'm
me,
not
not for
watching.
me. Go enjoy it.
It's
Yeah,
one of those
like
things where, yeah, to that point, like I there's so much more things I don't watch than do watch that I would if I
yeah,
got hung up about the things that other people are watching, I would live a miserable life. So,
right,
and
yeah,
again, to your point of like continuing the Acolyte story, isn't Star Wars just better off having more Star Wars in it? It's like, yeah, sure, there's gonna be
for sure.
misses or misses for you, but at least there's
Yeah,
more.
yeah. I think that's the thing. It's like I don't believe anybody is in any position, certainly as a fan, to say this story has value and this one doesn't,
Mhm, mhm.
because that's not for you to decide. Like, if I find, you know, the the arcs of the Mandalorian or the arcs of Andor to speak to me like at a deep level, and I didn't connect to anything in the Acolyte, like that's kind of just how it works. Like
Mhm.
it's like that one. Okay, wasn't for me, but
Right,
I know
right.
for a fact. I know for a fact there are people who feel that way about this show that I do about these ones, and that's great. That should be the spirit with which we
Mhm.
go forward.
Good faith
And it's
always.
like, yeah, and it's like, what are you proving otherwise? What are you like? Honestly, it's just then it's like an ego trip. Like
Mhm.
then it's just like, shut up. Like no one cares. No one cares what you think, right? It's like the way blank person online feels about um you know Mandalorian season 3, like it affects me zero in
Right,
terms of
right, right.
watching it, and it's like um, yeah, it's like, we just it's just again, like there are no winners. That's what it comes down to. Like when we lose a show like The Acolyte,
Mhm.
nobody wins. And
Yep.
like even the grifters who, live their parasitic relationship off making money from hate on off other people's creativity, like even though they make money and they say this is like a real win for Star Wars, blah blah, like nobody wins because you know what? They sat and watched it,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and it's like, and then they told people not to watch it. So it's like, you know, there's no winners. Like whatever you want to believe, and then there's also like one little wrinkle in this argument that I do want to like throw a lifeline to,
Mhm,
which I know what it's like to see a show's cancellation and feel positive.
mhm,
Um, because when Star Wars was on a gap, 2005 to 2008, my like number one thing was Halo. Like Halo was everything to me. And then that show came out on Paramount and I really, really disliked it. And I was like, you know, I don't think it's a good representation of Halo. I don't think it's like terribly good writing or acting or whatever. Like I thought it was just a really like bad swing. And so when they announced it was canceled after season 2 recently, like I was like kind of relieved. I was like, I feel like, maybe this means somebody else would take a swing later down the line. Um, Maybe somebody who's sitting recording this podcast right now. Who knows? Call me. But I think it's okay. It's okay to feel like, I think it's a normal enough reaction
mhm,
to say, you know what, I didn't like this. I feel better if they're not putting their resources in it.
mhm,
It a little different for Star Wars because Star Wars is allowed to have a lot more than Halo. But I think there's the difference is when you cross the line is my opinion on losing the Halo show included. I feel really bad for the people who like
mhm, mhm.
their art has ended. They lost
Right.
they lost jobs, they lost work. Like that is a tragedy no matter what. Like that's something that never feels good. And so when you see the people who are like spiking the football on the Acolyte, like that's when you've gone to scumbag territory.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'll leave you alone. I'll leave you alone if you're just like quietly like, you know what? I don't mind that it got canceled. I didn't love it. I'll leave you alone, like honestly.
Mhm.
But like it's the people who are celebrating and like again like proclaiming like it's some sort of victory because it's
Well,
not.
because the
It's
real
just
the
not.
real problem the real problem, and obviously like we've gone a long time, so I don't want to like make this too
Oh
much
yeah, this could
longer.
go on forever,
Going
honestly.
going
Yeah.
into the toxicity of fandom because I think we can talk about that in a
Yeah.
separate episode. But I think the interesting thing about it's not that they're necessarily just celebrating the cancellation of a show. It's just the dog whistle for them celebrating not continuing stories from a queer person, not continuing stories of a non-binary character, not continuing stories of people of color. I mean, they keep
Mhm.
saying it's bad writing. They keep saying that it breaks lore. They
Oh,
keep
yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that it's bad acting. That it's bad for Star Wars. But those are just dog whistles. They're just means something else. It's completely different signaling that they're doing, which I think is what's becoming toxic and difficult to handle because they're not talking about the show like we were talking before. They're not talking about the show on their on its own merits and in good faith. They're really
Mhm.
talking. It's not. I mean, it's not veiled anymore. I mean, they are outwardly
No.
going and commenting
Yeah.
on Amandala's Instagram and going and just attacking all the. I mean, if you have to go and attack actors who are just doing a job, if you have to go
Mhm.
attack someone else for liking a thing, then the place where you're coming from in terms of your enjoyment or non-enjoyment of a show isn't about the show itself. It means that it's a personal thing that you have
Right. Right.
outrage over, and you just don't know how to manage your inner turmoil because at the end it just
Yeah.
is
You don't know
projecting
how to live. You
it's
don't know how to
projecting
live in
your
the real world.
social anxieties through a show
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
franchise that was always meant to be the things that you are against. And I
Mhm.
think that's the
Mhm.
difficult thing with the Acolyte right now. The crowd that's joyful about it, it's not that they're joyful that a Star Wars show is ending, it's that they're glad that certain voices are silenced. And we all know which voices
Yeah.
they care about.
Yeah, which again, it's like sort of like hand in hand with what I was like meaning. It's like they are like literally celebrating people not having jobs.
Mhm, mhm,
Like like that is a line you cross. Like again, I don't care if you're a grifter or not. Like when you're in that realm, like you've crossed the line into the scumbag territory. And it's like, yeah, we've known for so long what these people do or have done, have always done, continue to do
mhm.
to the fandom. Like they create this environment that, again, it's like I don't want to say I mean it plainly when I'm like, the Acolyte was not canceled to cater to these people. It was not like, let me say that like as plainly as possible. Like it was not canceled to cater to the assholes,
Mhm, mhm,
but
mhm,
the assholes helped create an environment that allowed some
mhm.
executive to look at numbers and be like, got it, trim the fat. Like that goes hand in hand. But it's like we know what they've done to this space, and it plagues everything. It doesn't matter. There's no show that the grifters love
No.
because it's financially bad for them for Star Wars to be good because
Mhm,
because they
mhm,
make
mhm.
they make the money off the hate. And so it's like, they'll never paint it. They'll always like champion their heroes. They'll always
Alleged
find
heroes because
alleged heroes. Yeah,
they
we should
also
not at all connect these people. Yeah, like
they
they
also they
yeah,
also turn these heroes, i.e., George Lucas, into a thing that they never were. It's like George Lucas was
yeah,
always a liberal champion and always put identity politics into Star Wars.
yeah.
I mean, he made Ewoks the Viet Cong. It's like, come on, the man is,
Right.
and he said so. I mean, the man is not subtle. The
Yeah,
man
yeah,
has
for
like
sure.
gone out of his way to be, a voice of like a lot of the identity politics that these people are against. I mean, Newt Gunray, come on, come on. He's
Yeah,
George Lucas is many things, but one of them is not subtle. And then to just
no, for sure not. For sure
turn
not.
him into like this hero that wasn't putting
Oh
politics
yeah,
into Star Wars is
especially when they
ridiculous.
hated his movies too. Like
Oh yeah, yeah. These are
I
the same
guarantee it.
people,
And
that in 2005 were trashing the
yeah,
prequel trilogy.
and they'll say Dave Filoni should be running Star Wars, and then not say a single good thing about what he's making.
And that's
It's like,
and then ignore that Dave Filoni was supporting the Acolyte and supporting Leslie and going to bat for the show. It's just like the
yeah,
man was there supporting
yeah.
the Acolyte. So I don't know, but anyway, we could be talking about, and we will, because I think that uh, we definitely need to talk about fandom as well, because these fandom spaces are
Mhm.
kind of turning back into what they were in 2017, post 2017, after the Last Jedi, and it's disgusting to be honest, and it's worth just talking about. But as it happened,
Mm,
then they will heal after celebration. And I mean, and like and Balin's skull said, it's a cycle, and it happens over and over and
yeah,
over again. But all we can do is just like be positive voices and come at it in good faith and enjoy these wonderful stories made by wonderful people that want to just give us art and give us enjoyment. I think that's the most important thing about all of this. Like Leslie Hetland, John Caston, Ryan Johnson, like all these people just want to give us good stories. They want to give us good entertainment. They want to give us beautiful Star Wars. And we just
yeah,
are poorer for it by not having them continue their stories. But
yeah,
Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, as always, I knew this was going to be a great conversation, but it's
yeah.
definitely surpassed my expectations as usual. But before we sign off, tell us a little bit about what's going on with you, what's going on with the Imperial Senate podcast. I know we're going to see each other in a couple of weeks, hopefully. But before then,
Yeah,
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 why don't you tell us a little bit about what you got going on and
for
where people
sure.
can find you?
I will absolutely do that. And but first, I want to give people 2 points just to somewhat leave on a hopeful note.
Yeah.
Okay, um, there's no there's no expressing like how bad it is to lose. Like you can't adequately express enough how bad it is to lose the diversity of creation with Acolyte. Like you, there's no replacing that, right? What I will say though is let's remember um, we did not lose diverse voices on Star Wars
Mhm,
because I know it's easy to point at John and Dave as the two straight white guys, but like you look under them and there are names after names after names after names of marginalized members of marginalized media communities, and
mhm,
you can say Rick Famuyiwa, Deborah Chow,
mhm, mhm,
you know, Rachel Morrison, Gita Vasant Patel, all the Bryce Dallas Howard. Like there's names everywhere of these communities still putting their voice into Star
mhm,
Wars. Support them, love them, even if you don't love every episode. Like love them, support their work.
mhm,
And like Star Wars will continue to bring these people in. Like it will, and so just remain hopeful
mhm,
for that. And then the last point is there were four Star Wars characters who were cut from a season of an animated show. Then that show got canceled. Then that show got brought back and finished. Then it got brought back again and
mhm,
finished again.
mhm, mhm,
And then those four characters were put back into that show. And then those four characters were given 3 seasons of one of the most beautiful animated shows I've ever seen. And so let me just say again, life finds a way. You
mhm,
know, never say never with Star Wars characters. People don't stay on the floor for long. Whether it's another show, Acolyte comes back. Again, I don't want to give false hope. Don't want to be
mhm.
overly naive, but just the point being, things find a way back. So we'll see, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not the end.
I agree.
So yeah, thank you for letting me end with those two. And yeah,
Just
you can
beautiful,
find
beautiful
the
way.
thank you. You can find the Imperial Senate podcast at Senate Pod. I do have my own little solo show on there called the Yub Nub Club. We'll get Goose on there someday, but the another sort of episode that kind of goes hand in hand. I recorded with my friend Josh, who we went to D23 together. The title of the episode is "Joy and Turmoil in the House of Mouse," and
Mhm,
it's like it's kind of like how do we balance the excitement
mhm, mhm,
of what's coming and we know there's great things. We all giggled our way through that Mando and Grogu teaser,
mhm,
but like we can't ignore the fact that the industry is like so it's so rotten. And so it's like how do you and we recorded that before the Acolyte news, so it's missing some of that context, but
mhm.
a lot of the emotions are the same. So yeah, you can find the Up and Up Club on the Imperial Senate podcast feed as well. And yeah, you can just find me on Twitter at Nequicius, Naquicious.
Perfect. And I will leave for those who are like me who cannot spell too good. I will put all of those things in the description below. Please make sure to follow Nikki, very good friend and very good opinions. So please make sure to follow and make sure to follow Imperial Senate Podcast. Also, three very good friends. of mine, Claire, Charlie, and Nikki. They're like crushing it as always. So please make sure to follow everybody on there. But with that, a bit of a downer of an episode just because we're a little bummed out over the news about the Acolyte, but always joyful because we are enjoying the Star Wars that we have, and we are definitely thankful for the Star Wars that we have gotten. Thank you, Leslie Hetland, and the rest of the cast and crew for the Acolyte. While we hope that we do get a second season and we continue the story, we are thankful for what we've gotten, and we're thankful for the stories, Star Wars that we have gotten. So it's always good to, despite the angst and all the emotions and all the negativity that we might find ourselves in, it's always good to kind of also
Hmm.
pause and look back and be like, hey,
Yeah,
that was a good thing, and I enjoyed that
yeah.
moment because I
And
think,
we keep it alive. We keep it
yeah,
alive between us.
we do,
Even if
we
it's
do.
not with the company, like just doing these things, we keep it alive for us as fans. So don't lose sight of that.
Which I think was one of the most fun seasons of Star Wars television for me doing this podcast for sure, because I think all the
Mhm.
conversations I had with all the guests have been like a lot of fun, a lot of good energy, and it's always good to also bring new voices and just see new perspectives. So Acolyte has been definitely as much fun as I think I had since like Andor discussing the show with friends. So don't lose sight of
Mhm.
that, and those conversations aren't over, those friendships aren't over. They still are there. Just keep fostering them. But thank you so much, everybody. We have been Triad of the Force. If you like what you have heard, please boost our engagement by giving us all your negative comments as you have been lately on our last Acolyte video. This is a new one for me to block
Bring
you
them
with.
on, baby.
So if you think I will comment to your comment, I will not. I'm just going to block you. But thanks for boosting our video. So make sure to share, like, and subscribe if you do enjoy it, and we'll definitely appreciate it. If you want to follow us, we are on all the social medias, but particularly on Threads and Instagram. Just search for at Triad of the Force and you will find us. But with that, thank you so much. Hashtag renew the acolyte. Hashtag save the acolyte. And until the skeleton crew, which we will talk about soon, we were supposed to talk about today, but we didn't get to it. But
It looks
also,
fun. Woo!
it
We did
looks fun. And,
it.
and hashtag save Willow. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
may the force be with you.